Welcome to Chok Muay Chats episode 28. I'm Joe Comerford, commentator, content creator, former professional fighter living here in Thailand. Today, my guest for episode 28 is Shaun Shubert, a professional fighter and coach from America who's working on sports psychology and preparing a program for fighters for a pre-fight ritual. Welcome, Shaun, to Chok Muay
Hey,
Chats.
Joe. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for taking time out of your day for joining me on this podcast. Now, let's get into the nitty and gritty. How did you get into the sport of Muay Thai?
I had been training in classical martial arts, traditional karate stuff when I was a little kid. That was the big thing, especially in the States. 70s, it blew up. 80s and 90s, it was huge. And that's when I started training, about 6 years old. It wasn't until later when the UFC hit the scene. I was probably about 12, 13. I started getting into it, following all the excitement. And as I grew up in the karate system, they started popping up, having local promotions in my area. And it was kind of always one of those things that I wanted to get into to see if my karate background was really working out for me, if I really had the chops, if the defending yourself stuff was all going to pan out, if somebody was actually trying to fight me. So originally, I was getting into the mixed martial arts world because I was trying to prove to myself that my black belt was worth all the time and tribulations and all that kind of stuff. Turns out that fighting's a lot more difficult than it looks from the outside. So I got battered around quite a little bit in my early days, bounced around from trainers that were saying they knew how to fight to guys that were actually in the sport training. And then I just unearthed this whole different culture of combat sports, which if you're in combat sports or in the martial arts world, you know there's a real big line that separates the guys that are training in the gym from the guys that are competing, the guys that are training in martial arts for a hobby or an activity, and the guys that are training in a combat sport where it's a lot more proficient to getting a job done.
Yeah, the old. I was just thinking back to the old McDojo term when you were talking about
Yeah.
some of those those guys. So when we talk about the term McDojo, it's kind of chains of martial arts gyms back in the 80s when karate was really taking off in the US. It was a like a franchise of martial arts, and it was really popular.
Yeah.
Just quickly, I just wanted to pick your brain. How do you think Muay Thai came to be in the United States?
Oh man, I'm really unsure where the real tipping point was.
Mm,
Like I said, a lot of the things that I was introduced to early on was a real heavy kickboxing style. A lot of the guys
mm,
from
mm.
the States were competing in that more kickboxing style. Now everybody refers to it as K1, but back then it was just pretty much boxing with kicking involved, and they would only kick the body. The American style of kickboxing was Western style boxing, heavy punches and karate kicks, but they were doing a lot more spinning kicks, a lot more axe kicks, and the kicks were only allowed to go to the body. And then I think it might have been about the Ramon Deckers era where it started to start to bleed over into the United States a little bit more,
Mm.
just because he was like one of the first phalanx to go over there and start working the ties over and bringing some recognition more to the Western world. I think before it got to the United States, but I think that kind of era where the Dutch were going in and dominating a little bit was where the Americans started to kind of liken that they could start to compete there, because you're taking pretty much the American style of kickboxing and then adding the leg kick and the clinch to it, which obviously is a big part of the game. But when you're going from zero to Muay Thai, having some kickboxing in between is definitely a good stepping stone. So I think that's how it really made its way over here.
Mm.
And I think that the UFC in the United States, the popularity of the UFC and the striking out of there is what is really driving Muay Thai here. A lot of the Westerners that I talk to, or especially a lot of the guys from the States that you talk to, they'll describe Muay Thai as the stand up part of the UFC, where,
Okay.
you know, I guess if you're a layman, kind of likening it to that is a good
Mm.
comparison. It's easy for people to connect in their brains, but as we know that there's a lot more that separates stand up in MMA to actual Muay Thai.
Yeah, well, I definitely think it was probably one of the driving forces over the last 10 years in terms of global popularity for Muay Thai. Before that, it was a very niche sport, but now we're seeing a great sort of global expansion of it. And I think, there is a lot to be said for MMA and its impact on driving Muay Thai to the global front. Now, you've spent a bit of time in Thailand. You fought on the likes of Max Muay Thai, and how did you come to be in Thailand at that point?
It stems back to my original martial arts, and I was training with a group of guys who do a lot more of blade and stick work. They would uh, start in the Kali systems,
Mm,
and then they would be looking for something that's a bit more intense, a little bit more practical, livened up. And then I ran into these guys. They run a group called a mock. They're a blade fighting group, but they're pretty hardcore guys. There's a lot of bouncers, security guards, mercenaries, bounty hunters. And because it was a global organization, we used to meet in Thailand, in
mm,
Pattaya, actually. And guys from Europe, the guys from Asia, the mercenaries, all these kind of secret service guys would go over to Thailand. We'd be able to train and then kind of muck about. And that's how I really got going over to Thailand at first. These guys, like I said, were kind of into the mucking about portion after the personal protection training in the morning. So I would finish my personal protection stuff, work out with the blade and stick guys, and then I would throw my gear in a bag and I would jog to Fairtex and started doing private lessons over there. After COVID, it had been about 4 or 5 years since I had been to Thailand, and I decided that I was going to go back. I was going to fight over there and finish up my Muay Thai career as a professional. It was one of my bucket list things to do in the first
mm,
place. So I went back to Fairtex. I went with a plan to at least fight at a local stadium, if not do more. I took myself and my family out there for 6 weeks, and to kind of support myself going out there, I arranged a trip for the members of my gym to come out to. And so I went out there for a few weeks. I ended up getting a couple fights in, and then at the end of the trip, guys from my gym all came out, and we did a little bit of a stint at Fairtex, a little tour around southern Thailand, and then I started putting the trip together as kind of an annual thing. And Fairtex was always good to me. I had made friends there from training previously, and then after COVID, it was amazing how many people were friendly and recognized me and remembered after such a long time being away from Thailand in general, but especially
mm.
Fairtex. Some of these gyms, the turnover rate for trainers and fighters
Yeah.
and their visiting is, night and day. So yeah, it was a pretty good experience. It was pretty cool for them to again have remembered me from the previous 6 years. and then get right back into it like no COVID, like nothing had shut down, and we got right back to being on track. So
Oh, nice. It's a bit of a different story to other people, training knife fighting with mercenaries and the likes of that. Yeah, very cool. So very interesting in terms of a martial arts background. The great thing about this platform is you hear so many different sort of origin stories of how people got into Muay Thai. So it's great. Thank you for sharing that. Now, the thing that we wanted to get into was sports psychology. Now, both of us have been professional fighters. And I know as well as you do that that is a very, very scary thing to get into before a fight. I believe the colloquial term is yourself. Um, I know at least I I have felt like that before a fight. So, uh, how could you describe the sort of the pre-fight experience for somebody who's not been a fighter before? What the feelings might be?
yeah, you're gonna get hit with a myriad of emotions, as you just elegantly put it. Um, the 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 big thing, I guess, for me is seeing where you're at. Like, how far out are you in training? Because your body and your brain are just working on whatever they have for information to go with, and then it's a very uh like Neanderthalic type of thing
Mm,
that's happening to you internally. People can get just as nervous to show up for a day of hard sparring as they would to show up for a fight, especially with the level of experience. The program that I'm putting together is called Mental Fight Camp, and it is designed for folks that are training as well as people that are dipping their toes into the competition pool.
mhm.
You can get just as nervous on your first day of sparring as you would for a fight. The first thing that I do is just really break down all of the chemicals naturally produced in our body, and then all of your biological mechanisms that are kind of firing those things off. So we have four basic chemicals that are playing in your brain and your body. The neurotransmitters are letting those all out, whether it's the dopamine or endorphins, the adrenaline, the cortisol, and the testosterone. All those things are naturally produced in the body, in females and in males, and in different levels and different thought processes. These things are all going to start to play inside of you. And on the surface level, it all gets categorized as I feel nervous, I've got butterflies, I've
Mm,
got anxiety, this, that, the other thing. And in actuality, there's all these different receptors and all these different neural pathways and biological triggers that are shooting these feelings off into you, and then everybody just categorizes them as being nervous or getting butterflies or themselves, as you put it. And actually, there's a lot more to it than that, where you're identifying different chemical properties and the reason that your body's excreting those into you. So, for example, your adrenaline is going to heighten your sense of alertness, and it's going to give you a boost of energy, and it's going to dull your pain.
mm,
Your dopamine is going to be a pleasure receptor. So maybe the dopamine release only comes when you're doing good things, where the endorphin rush is going to happen because you're getting excited about something. Um, and then they have these things where they're playing together. Same thing for your adrenaline. You're going to get an adrenaline dump. You're going to get the butterflies in your stomach, and then everybody's going to describe it as excitement in my belly, or I feel my stomach doing flips, or whatever it is. But in actuality, that's your adrenaline. And your body's getting amped up with extra things to help you alleviate stress and sharpen your senses and dull your pain and put your brain into a happy place. And most people just get all haywire when they feel these feelings. They have no valve releases, they have no where to store the energy, and they have no way to use the energy once it's been bottled up.
Mm. So, what tips do you think you could give to people to mitigate some of these feelings, or not mitigate, perhaps actually mitigate some of the overwhelming feelings that they might feel pre-fight?
I think that knowledge is one of the biggest things.
Mm,
When I was getting nervous, I had no idea what the emotions were. I was just eh, bottling everything up inside and just saying that I was nervous. I was mixed with emotions of happy, excited, scared, pumped up, all these
mm,
things that the emotions are different, but there's just one feeling happening in your body. So if you can identify these things, split them up, and know that they're happening and know why they're happening. And then I put a different little spin on some of these things. For example, your adrenaline is going to help you dull pain. And I just tell my guys when they're going out there, hey, that excited feeling you're getting? That's your body producing armor for yourself. That's
mm,
your body putting you in a place where you're going to forget about the pain, where the pain's going to miss you. uh, I let guys know, hey, when you feel those butterflies in your stomach, that's your body getting excited, and we're going to turn all of your excitement into confidence. So it's kind of just putting these little curbs, changing the perspective of what your body's doing, why it's doing those things for you, and ultimately putting that positive spin on it to say, hey, look, I know you're getting these knots in your stomach, but that's your body producing all this extra energy for you. And that's going to be a powerful tool for you in the fight. So, again, just knowing what these things are up front and then how to deal with them, knowing that you're going to feel these feelings and that it's going to kind of do like a slow release drip through your
mm,
body from the moment you take fight news all the way up until you're in the ring and the bell rings and you're moving around now. The subconscious is such a powerful thing. And when you get news 4 weeks out, 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out, you
mm,
have these thoughts that leak into your head, whether it's a thought of doubt or whether you have a thought of the fight or visualize some kind of adversity or some kind of thing that you might be doing well. You get some butterflies in your stomach. You just have to think about it. And then all of a sudden you get all gully with emotions. And I think that knowing that that's going to happen and being able to kind of coach people through it in those early weeks is what ultimately leads you to having the tools when you're in the locker room or when you're making the walk to the ring or when you're sitting in the corner before the bell rings or in between rounds. I think that those are the things that will really help you start to mitigate right up front, and knowing that it's going to happen, knowing what to do with it, and how to kind of store and bottle that energy up. Obviously, there's tips and tricks that we have throughout the course, whether it's visualization or some sort of journaling, talking things through with your coach in these different areas. And as the course progresses, we give different things that will kind of lead up to that. I basically designed the course to be, what would I think and feel as soon as
mm,
I got fight news? What would I be doing while I'm doing my physical training? What do I do when I'm backstage with my coach getting my hand wraps? What am I thinking about when I get to the ring and I take in the stadium, I take in the music and the crowd. It's a very different change in atmosphere when you're backstage and you got all the fighters and coaches. The room's a little bit more quiet, ominous. It's got some energy in there from people maybe shadow boxing or hitting pads, which is a rarity in Thailand in general, way different from how people warm up in the United States. Um, and then you get out there and the cameras are in your face, the fog machine's going, the lights are whipping around, the announcer's on there screaming. You can't understand what he's saying because you don't speak Thai. And then you're in the ring. And what are you thinking about when you're walking out there? How are you keeping your thoughts on track? And then how do you stay on task while you're in the fight? How do you recenter yourself when you come back to the corner and your coach is giving you the chat? So my pre-fight mental fight camp is kind of all the things that get you to the ring. And then when you're in the ring, I use a program called Fighting with Tactics that I developed with one of my mentors, which is how you fight with your intentions instead of technically driven. A lot of people, a lot of coaches, fighters, gyms, they get hung up on the technique. Everybody's technique driven. And when you get in the ring, if you're thinking about the details of your technique, you're going to get run over by your opponent. When you get in there, you just think about what you want to do to him. I want to hit him. I want to fake him. I want to clinch him. I want to move. I want to invade, evade. And those are the big chunks that we fight with. We fight with our tactics. We fight with our intentions. The moves just come out of us by consequence. So by breaking things up tactically, by putting our mental fortitude in check with mental fight camp and then staying on task in the ring with fighting with tactics is how I'm getting guys from the gym to the stage and then to victory on the other side.
Yeah, nice. I really like that. The concept of fighting with intention. It's one thing that a lot of guys get caught up on how to kick properly or how to am I throwing the hook this way or am I throwing it this way? That old debate. But fighting with strategy and fighting with intent. Specifically talking about ring strategy. How are you going to fight a southpaw? Stay out on the outside of that lead leg. Just small things like that, but make it intentional rather than, oh, I've got to turn my hip over as I kick. But I think that's beautiful. Fighting with intention rather than just fighting with technique.
Yeah, and we train the techniques. We train the small stuff in the gym, the details in the gym. But when you go to fight or when you're sparring, you're fighting with intentions. You're fighting with tactics. The technical details, like you're saying, are the small things that come out of you. But to put that kind of thought into your hip turning over while the other guy's standing across from you, just looking to put a cross on your chin, you have more things that you need to start wheeling through. That you start getting in the weeds of the details, you're going to get run over in a sparring match. You're going to get run over in a fight where the details should have been worked out in the gym. You should have used your tactics as an organizational tool to say, hey, when I am fighting with this aggressive strategy and I'm using my combinations, here's all the combinations that come out of me technically. But if I think about individual combinations while I fight, I get run over. If I think about hitting this guy as many times as I can and staying safe and countering back with more combinations, being aggressive in my strategy, then whatever move comes out of me is whatever move comes out of me. That's what the moment demanded of me in the fight. So we train our techniques, we train the details in the gym, but sparring and fighting is done with tactics and intention.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I've had many a fight where I've thought about the small details, trying to piece my favorite combinations together. And then eventually you get clipped or you get caught. And then I've had the best fights where I've not had to even think about it. And just, I remember one fight that I had against the guy, Enrico Liesa, shout out to him. I remember the very last round, my trainer said, just go full walk forward style. That's all I did, and just smothered him for that last round, and I didn't have to think about it. And it's all about intention, 100%.
Yeah, when you're getting fatigued and the oxygens flow into your brain a lot less, or I've been in plenty of situations where have dropped me and I get
Mm,
the 8 count, I stand back up and I I could tell you where I was.
mm,
I mean, I've finished fights where I came to in the third or fourth round, and I only have glimpses of recollection to competing in some of these fights. And people watching, they're like, "Oh man, how did you get out there?" It's in your subconscious. It's because you've trained the intentions that even when the lights are on but nobody's home, you're still out there doing a job. You're still out there getting a win or getting a W, getting a knockout, whatever it is, because
mm,
you're just going on fumes, but the fumes are so ingrained into your subconscious that all the right stuff's happening. It's just working for you with no conscious thought.
mm.
That's what
Now,
I tell.
where can people check out these programs or get access to them?
I have all of the programs digitally written out. The core skills is where I start everybody. So new people come into my program, they get core skills. People that have experience, I like them to at least get the gloss over of core skills,
Mm,
because to me, it's the organizational tool. You're a professional fighter, you've got a litany of techniques. You have some that you've been doing for years, some that you've been uh, training and working on and trying to make better. And there's no toolbox. Everybody talks about a toolbox, but it's more like a junk drawer.
mm,
My toolbox is very organized. It's labeled. If you pull out the drawer for singles, it has all the single techniques in there. The core skills is your basic stuff: straight punch, hook punch, uppercut, body shot, your basic kicking, front teep, roundhouse, and knees. After you get through core skills, you want to put a spinning kick in there, you want to throw a side kick in there, you want to throw jumping, flying, switching, whatever these kind of things are. Yeah, that's good, but the basics are there.
mm,
My tactics is, like I said, though, just an organization to your toolbox. So I have these core skills mapped out. I have a 90-day core skills program. You can get that from me. I do online coaching as well as in-house coaching. My mental fight camp is under progress right now. We're in a construction mode. My partner and I are filming and getting all the films cut up and edited up and getting ready for release. So we're in the production process. We do have all of the literature typed up, all the
mhm,
guides we're following, and we're putting together kind of the back office documentation to the videos that we're releasing, for us to have stuff to call on, for us to be able to write a book and give training guides, PDFs for people to follow along with. But anybody can reach out to me. It's Shaun Red Seal Muay Thai. All of the words are spaced with underscores. I'm real heavy on Instagram. I do have a Facebook, but very rarely I use it. So Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me. And like I said, I'm working through it with people one-to-one online and in person in my gym right now. I do have the documentation for people that might want to read it off of paper rather than watching videos or doing online chats with me. I
Mm.
do have the Muay Thai program, especially the core skills, is laid out in some pretty good detail on paper. Same thing with the online mental fight camp. We do have the literature for that, but I think that you're going to get more out of the online courses.
Yeah, I think that I would agree with that. With anything, learning one on one is the best way to fast track progress. Having that individual learning, even though my actual professional background is teaching, one on one
Yeah.
individual learning is the best way to fast track progress, and especially with Muay Thai and martial arts as well. So yeah, I would agree with that. So can you just please repeat for everyone where to find you online?
Yes, I'm on Instagram, real heavy on Instagram. Shaun Red Seal Muay Thai. All of the spaces between the words are done with underscores, and that's the best place to reach me. You can DM me, check out all my content. It's all geared on towards this psychological stuff, all these kind of mental fight camp trainings, and some of my teachings are on there. My teaching style is a lot different than most other people that you see. So definitely go on there and check out the teaching style. And like I said, I am available for online and personal stuff if that's what you're into as well.
Well, thank you, Mr. Shaun Shubert, who's a professional fighter and coach over at Red Seal Martial Arts or Red Seal Muay Thai.
It's a Red Seal Martial Arts Company. Again, because I had originally started in more of a traditional background and I was doing a lot more personal protection, I just really summed the whole thing up as to I'm going to be a martial arts company. And just from competing and over the years, Muay
Mm.
Thai is where I kind of carved my niche out in. But I would say a lot of my analytical stuff and a lot of my psychological stuff comes from martial arts in general. So I consider myself a martial artist. Muay Thai is just the vessel that got me in front of the world.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Shaun, for joining me on Chok Muay Chats episode 28. If you like this episode, make sure you like, subscribe, and share amongst your friends. It'll be available on YouTube and Spotify. Thank you, sir, for joining me. And I
Thank you, man.